In this video, we're developing a simple role and design prompt concept that will allow us to build one-shot prompts that design front-end applications like what we're seeing right now from a user experience point of view. In the last video, we went into detail of setting up both a role and a design brief for what was classed as a multi-app framework. So the idea that you might have various extensions or plugins, you could have global settings for all of them, you could collapse that down and from here have individual menu items for each of the applications, and even go from light to dark mode. Now, to keep things simple with building out our new structure, we're going to take information from the last video and we're just going to do a slight adaptation on it. So the last video was about a multi-app structure within a shell desktop. In this situation, we only want a single application. So what we'll do is have a look at the structure of how this will come together. Now, I usually start a conversation with a line similar to this. In this conversation, we will explore and I give it a headline. After that, I give it an instruction to say yay and please wait, because I don't actually want it to do anything with this information because I haven't told it what to do. Now, I don't usually go straight into getting it to use a detailed design prompt to build an application. Instead, I want it to become a certain sort of person. In this case, it's going to be a single app UX, UI mock-up designer or an architect or something like that. So I'll have a simple prompt that says read and wait for guidance. I'll press enter and then I'll paste in a really detailed description of the sort of person that would be perfect for writing this sort of application. Now, the last prompt I'll do is code implementation prompt. So it's the instructions of what I'm trying to build, and it'll usually be fairly detailed, but it's simply, here is the design brief, please implement, and then I paste it in. Now, you might be wondering, do you need the first two prompts at all? And the answer is not really. The first one definitely you don't need, but I like to start it. Then afterwards, if the second prompt doesn't do exactly what I want, or the third prompt doesn't do exactly what I want, I can go back and edit them, knowing that I still understand where the start of the conversation is. As for the role prompt, if you don't include that, you'll still probably get a good outcome if your requirements document is detailed. But what the role will do is give you a higher probability of success, because it won't just be reading the instruction from the point of view of a general large language model. It will impersonate and think like the person that would normally implement this, and they think of things a little bit differently to a generalist person. Now, rather than starting from scratch on this one, I'm going to build on top of a successful implementation, because we'd already built this multi-application, which means we've got multiple applications on the left. When you click on one of them, the idea is that the menu on the right here or in the middle becomes dynamic based on that particular application. We essentially want the same application minus this panel and a couple of other global settings. So what I've done is just gone down a little bit further after that was created and given a new prompt, basically saying that earlier in the conversation, you gave me a definition for a role, and I actually pasted the role in again, but I'm asking for it to just adapt what's going on here so that it's for a single app setup. And this is because I'm trying to do templates around building micro apps every day, and I want a consistent user interface each time. And so we developed this role for someone that can draw that interface for me. But before it does the work, I also said it might be useful if you give me 2 or 3 questions that I can answer. So what it's done is given me a bunch of Q&As that I can work through. And I've essentially taken a couple of headings from its questions that it gave and gave my own opinion of what I want to see happen. And from there, we ended up with a role basically for a single app UX mock designer. So it's very similar, but it's got differences that will be important when we go to generate this new structure. So with the role created, we can go and select all the information that's in there, put it in the clipboard, and basically after we do our conversation starter and we've put read and wait for guidance, press enter, we would just paste that particular information directly into the conversation window. Now, I did that in Claude, but let's look at the code implementation prompt, which in my case I did in ChatGPT. But what we'd want to do is, here is the design brief, please implement, and we'll paste it in. And we can see a design brief has been put in place. And I'll just go over quickly how I adapted the other design brief to make this one. Now, the desktop single app design document is fairly extensive. It goes through, and every time I run it, it tends to give an accurate result each time. But to create it was fairly simple, because what we did was we built on top of the design we did in the last video, which was the multi-application framework, and we just pasted it all in and asked it a simple question. Now, the follow-up statement to that design document was essentially to update the current multi-app shell so that it looks more like a single app shell. And when you're doing that, should we drop anything, simplify, or reframe any of the statements that were there? Now, the drop, simplify, reframe process worked out concepts about what it thought we should drop. One of them I didn't really want to let go of. I wanted the Command K for searching, but I didn't need it for application switching, so a minor change there. It then talked about different areas that were common and reframed them so they made more sense in a single application structure. It also gave a couple of minimal ideas to think about, and I took some of these into account. For instance, I didn't want to have a footer status bar. So from there, I just gave it a few instructions, such as what I wanted with the Command K, a couple of other changes. It started building a single app spec. Now, I read this in detail. It's really important that you get it right. A couple of the things that I noticed is it was going into the technical side of things, such as using a convex database. And this is a pure UX experience. I don't want to get into the underlying technologies when building out this prompt. So I let it know. It made a couple of modifications, and we kept going until we had a final application design that I could run on a consistent basis. And this did work the first time. So now that you got a copy of the design brief, we can work through the 3 prompts that are listed here. Now, if we head over to Claude, this is what I did the first time. In this conversation, we'll explore single app UX design, say yay and wait. So it started waiting, ready to move forward. And I said, read and wait for guidance. And I gave it the role. It became a personality. So it says, got it. I understand my role, and it's got a little bit of conversation about what goes on, waiting for your guidance on the single app design we're creating. And I said, here is the design brief, please implement. And I pressed paste and I pressed enter to see what it would create. So we end up with a whole lot of code. You'll notice that there's various versions going on here. So I'm just going to bring up version 1, which is the first one that it created. And you can see that it had a little bit of a challenge here. So I naturally had a look behind the scenes just to see what was going on. I did notice the way it was scripting out to Tailwind CSS was in the times that it failed, it looked like this. I gave it a basic prompt that said, why does it look like this? Is there a issue with the CSS or links? And it said, yes, I think it's a CDN issue. And so then when we move on to version 2 of this, everything started to come together looking well. And we can see that it's popping out to Cloudflare to a Tailwind module. So my experience with using this prompt was that it would give really great output, but when used in the Claude application, it would sometimes work, sometimes not, unrelated to the actual code, but more to the order of how things were being called within the code base. So I'm going to show you a quicker way. Now, I just mentioned that if you want one-on-one help or guidance on vibe coding or using AI pair programmers, then go look for Appy Dave online. Once you get there, you'll come up to the main website where you can book a call with me, and we can do one-on-one sessions in the area of AI pair programming and vibe coding. So getting back to this session, what I found was generating it within the Claude application was hit or miss. So if we move on to version 3, we start seeing similar sorts of errors over and over again. And it's not until we get to version 5 that we get another working version, though not quite as good. So what I thought was I'll break out to an IDE, or in this case, we'll be using Claude Code just to generate bulk versions of this. So I've just opened up Visual Studio, and you can see here that I've got 3 examples, which we'll look at soon. But the first thing we should look at is the role. And so the role is in Markdown format. We can see that it's a single app. It's UI design specialist. We've got all the expertise, all the guidance for what that role should entail. After that, we got the design brief going on here, and this is a full spec of what we would like to generate. It's a single app framework shell. We've got the layout, a menu on the left. We've got the different pages that we want to see an example of. We've got a content panel in the center. Going to have Command K as a key that can make things happen like search, and there's an optional top bar. We'll see what it does there. And we've got this important idea of theming is that it supports light and dark mode. So from there, all we can do is go into a terminal, and I'm just going to use Claude in this case. So we'll go Claude. I'm specifically going to use the Sonnet model. I don't want to waste my credits on Opus. It's not really needed for the problem we're trying to deal with here. So the simple prompt will be something similar to this: become the role, and we'll just put in the @ sign, and we'll go and select role down the bottom there. And this is this file that we can see over on the left being used. Now I'll just come over to the design brief. Can you implement, and we'll just say a design brief, we'll select that and write into index example 4. So it's just going to impersonate the role, try to implement the design brief, and then write it out to a file that doesn't currently exist. So it's now going through a chain of thought. It's going to create a HTML structure, implement the different concepts as we go. At the end, we're going to see a green file here called index example 4.tml. So that took about 2 or 3 minutes. So let's figure out how this all works. So we'll come over, we've got a dashboard. It's looking pretty good. We can go to a wizard. There should only be 1 step implemented. That's all I asked for in the prompt. Then we've got a form, and it's a pretty complex form. This is great. We've got analytics. Now we've got to figure out where the theme changes are. We can't see them yet. Let's check this Command K first. So if I type in dashboard, yep, great, and wizard, this is working good. If I go down to settings, here are our themes. So we've got light and we've got dark. This is looking pretty good. So that's our dashboard and wizard. So moving on to the first example, which I did earlier, and we've got the dashboard, a wizard, we've got a form. It's similar, but it is different. Analytics, the Command K on this one works. I know that, so we can type information in. When we look at how the settings were done, it's same concept, just a different way of implementing the control. This is working great. Moving on to example 2, much better look and feel. This was what I loved about this, was the idea that you could use the same role and prompt multiple times and get totally different outputs while still keeping true to the goal. So we've got a wizard, we've got a data form, and we've got analytics. We've got our little theme button here, but if we click on it, the dark theme is not quite the colors we want. We need to play around with this a little bit. And can I go back? I can. The Command K seems to work. This is good. And what do preferences do? We can do our themes here as well. Interesting. And if I move on to the last example, which is example 3 for me, we've got dashboard, wizard, form, and analytics. We've got Command K. So if we put in dashboard, looking great, and settings, it does it as a little button, which is pretty cool. So just as a quick recap, in the last video I did, we created a role and we created a brief on multi-app desktop design briefs. In this video, what we've done is taken those original prompts and we've used an adaptation technique. We've modified the role to a single app person. We've modified the design brief to a single app design brief. After that, what we did was we just worked through the simple prompt structure, start the conversation, inject the role, finally inject the design brief with basically the word implement, and let it go and do what it needs to do. Now, it worked really well in Claude Code. It was a little bit hit and miss in the Claude web application, but that had nothing to do so much with the code, but just the way it was trying to load JavaScript in that particular environment. Anyway, I'm Happy Dave. In the next video, we'll be continuing this journey of developing micro apps using Claude Code. So if you want to see more about this, then please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.